The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. It is Thursday morning. It is the 6th of June. I know this because I never know what day it is, but I know this because yesterday was my son's 16th birthday. Pinch me. I don't even know how that could possibly be, but he's 16 now. And the truth is he's looked like he's been 16 for a really long time, so I guess it like all makes sense now. But everybody keeps asking me, how does it feel? And I'm like, I like it so weird. Because it seems like yesterday they handed him to me. Don't get me crying. But in any case, we are here coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It is also the home for Autism Live. And it's not a coincidence that those two things exist in the same place and time. We are coming to you from the CARD headquarters. We call Center for Autism and Related Disorders CARD. We are coming to you live from their studio. And the reason why we talk about ABA a lot on this program, and the reason why I tend to love on CARD, is because that was where my son got his treatment, the treatment that has made all the difference in the world. So I throw that out to all of you. We talk about other ABA providers and about quality ABA providers, and there are other quality ABA providers besides CARD. We never want to make it sound as if there aren't, but I have a natural predisposition to CARD because that was where all of my mom hopes and dreams came true. So I'm forever going to talk about CARD and the amazing ABA that we got at CARD. And I'm very unapologetic about that. I don't... what else could I do? I'm sure that you can all understand that. But hey, we welcome everyone to this program, everyone, because we're trying to build that bigger autism community that encompasses individuals who are on the autism spectrum, of course, right? And so if you are on the spectrum, we welcome you and your opinions and your thoughts and your feelings to the show, of course. But we also welcome the parents who love you, and your significant others who love you, and your friends, and your outside family, and your work family, and the people who know and love you around you, and the people who help you to get to the goals that you so richly deserve to get to. So that, for me, is that bigger autism community. And by the way, let's not forget the teachers, yeah? So that's our audience, and somebody wrote in and asked the other day, do you just, I think it was yesterday, they said, do you just talk about 5-year-olds or do you ever talk about teens? We talk about autism from a 360-degree perspective. So, all the things that could come into play when autism is a part of your life, which, come on, isn't that the whole world at this point? Isn't autism somewhere touching every single life on this planet? I think so. And, so that will encompass how do we get to the progress, of course. How do we get to resources that get us to the progress, of course. But it also includes things like, how do you deal with all the emotions? How do you deal with other people and their thoughts and feelings and concerns? How do you deal with putting food on the table, and what food do you want to put on the table to be as healthy as possible? And everything in between. How do you feel about this movie? Hey, this is a rich community with rich lives, so there's lots to talk about. That's what we're talking talking about here on Autism Live. And it doesn't happen without you. The whole show is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate. We want to know how things are going in your life. What are the things that matter to you? What are the things that you wish could be in place? Because maybe they already are. You don't know. I don't know. But let's find out together. You know what I always say, si se puede, we hold hands, we get there together. So in any case, there are lots of different ways that you can connect with us. Traven, the fabulous Traven, is going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us. While he does that, I do want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. And if you go there, you will see that there are lots of video tiles and they're separated by categories and you can search them by text. At the bottom of the page, there is a chat button. If you click on that, you can write in whatever you want. It is totally anonymous. You can be writing in on the other sites that Traven is showing you, like Facebook and YouTube, and we check on those and try to respond to those. But people can usually identify who's asking the question, and sometimes you got a question that's a little bit more sensitive and you want it to be private. So please feel free to write in on our chat. I'm looking at what people have already written in this morning, and somebody wrote in and said, are we going to be live today? We have been having a little bit of a technical issue with, we use a TriCaster, and I don't know whether it's like a change in humidity, but this is always the time of the year that the TriCaster gets a little janky on us. And so we've been, you know, we need a little maintenance on our TriCaster, but we're here. Traven worked it out. We're here, and sorry that we were a couple of minutes late, but we're here. And then we've got another question. I'm going to try to have some time later on to get to these questions that you guys have been writing in, because we love the back and forth. And we have lots of experts on the show, and we love for you to have a chance to talk to them. By the way, I always like to remind you, especially on Thursdays. Thursday's the reminder day. We do have a lot of experts on the show, but I'm not one of them. As I mentioned, I'm a parent, a very proud autism parent, and I'm not an expert in autism. Sometimes my voice is very strident and I'm very opinionated, so it sounds like I'm an expert, but please know that I am not an expert, and I don't consider myself an expert. I don't claim to be an expert in anything related to autism. I'm a student in the front row, and I've been in the front row for a while now, and been hosting shows about autism now for a while. So I've interviewed a lot of people. So I'm very fond of saying anymore, I have an informed opinion, but it's still an opinion, right? But we do have experts for you to talk to, and that's super important to me that you get an opportunity to do that. So feel free to write in on the chat if there are things, and I've got it open right now so that I can see if somebody writes something in, and I'm going to get the Facebook chat open here in a second. Okay, we do like to start Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. I got a great email yesterday. I'm not going to say which university because I don't have permission, but more and more we have universities who write into us and say that they are watching because they love the jargon of the day and their students are using it. That makes me so happy. That it's kind of funny though. We started the jargon of the day as a way to explain to parents who don't have the degree in psychology what the experts are talking about, but now they're training the would-be experts using our jargon. There's something not right about that, but it makes me happy. Okay, so you can see over my shoulder the term that we're going to talk about today, three-term contingency. This is something that I talk about on the show all the time. I didn't bring any big pieces of paper in with me, but let's talk about the three-term contingency. You know that when we do jargon, we like to give you the actual definition, and then whenever possible, I like to make fun of it because it's a hobby of mine and I feel that it's important. And if we can't laugh, you know, we're kind of dead in the water, right? So we make fun of the actual definition when it applies, and sometimes it's easy pickings, right? And then we give you a working definition, which often makes the experts break out into hives. But it helps us to know, what are we talking about and how does this really help me? So, Traven, let's go ahead and show them the actual definition for three-term contingency. Here we go. In operant conditioning, I mean already, right? Refers to stimulus control, in particular an antecedent contingency called the discriminative stimulus SD, that influences the strengthening or weakening of behavior through such consequences as reinforcement or punishment. Ah, what does that even mean? You'd have to have 3 dictionaries out open to, because if you don't know what operant conditioning is, and, let's face it, I learned about operant conditioning back in second year psychology in college, and then I promptly forgot it because I wasn't using in my life. You know what I'm saying? And didn't think that I was ever coming back to that. So, you'd need to look up that, and then you would, oh my gosh, right? It's just dense. What in the hey nani nani are they trying to say? So let's move on to our working definition, which is much easier. The 3-term contingency is the ABCs of behavior that we talk about all the time. A stands for antecedent, B stands for behavior, and C stands for consequence. So I took out a little post-it, right? And usually I do this with a big piece of paper, but the truth of the matter is, if you can write small, you can do this on anything. I'm folding it into thirds simply so that I can make myself 3 columns without having to draw them. Okay, and so I would put across the top of here A, B, and C. A for the first column, B for the middle, and C for the last column. And that's all you really have to remember. If you don't remember that A stands for antecedent, well, no one is going to fail you on the test of life, right? So A stands for antecedent, and it's more jargon, I know, but antecedent stands for what happened before. So when we're looking at a behavior, we want to go, what happened before? Then we want to talk about the behavior, and your behavior therapist will talk about the topography of the behavior. That just means, what's it look like, right? Why they couldn't just say that, I don't know, but more jargon for you. So B is for behavior. What's the behavior? So it may be that, you asked your daughter to pick up her toys. That's the antecedent. That's what happened before. You asked her to pick up her toys. And we'll come back to that in just a second. The behavior was that she started throwing her toys. And be as specific as you possibly can when you're writing this down in the behavior. You would write down, she threw the toys. It started at 2:10. She threw the toys for 10 minutes, and then she started spitting on her toys at 2:15. And, and just list it all there. This does 2 things. It's as specific as possible, but when you start looking behavior, knowing that you're going to write it down in a column, you look at it in a different way. You get a little removed from it. You get a little dispassionate. You go, oh yeah, he's kicking the leg of the TV stand. Instead of going, oh my gosh, he's kicking the leg of the TV stand and this is going to be the rest of our lives. It really does help a parent because you start looking at it as a scientist and you start to recognize that behavior is just communication, right? And you go, all right, that is not going to be the rest of my life, but I'm noticing it right now. He's kicking the leg of the TV stand and, do I need to do something so that he doesn't break himself or the TV or both, right? And you write it all in here when you have a breath and have a second. And then the C is the consequence. Now, usually what we want to do is write the behavior first, then ask ourselves, okay, what did happen before? And that's a little bit, shaky because you got to remember, okay, well, wait, oh, right, I asked her to pick up her toys. That's what started. So you would write that down. But then at the same time, you think to yourself, this is about a half an hour after I fed her a red popsicle. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. And you don't know, so you write it down there. Maybe it was that we had lunch late. Maybe we haven't had lunch and we should have had lunch. Maybe, she hasn't had anything to drink. I mean, whatever the things are that you remember, it's like, what's on board when this happened, right? Because sometimes if they didn't get enough sleep the night before, that might be what's happening a little bit here. And then, of course, later on, you're going to write what the consequence was, and you're going to forgive yourself. Because a lot of times as parents, once we see how this works, we go, oh, I don't think I'm doing the right consequence here, right? Because the consequence may have been that you gave her another red popsicle and she was all happy then, right? And then you can see clearly, oh, well, if this happens and I do this, I get a red popsicle. And you go, oh, that's not the equation I want to put out, right? And that's what the 3-term contingency is about, is that always in life with living beings, there's an A, a B, and a C. Something happens, there's a behavior, and there's a consequence. And by the way, this is all human beings, but it's also all animal life and plant life too. I just listened to a fabulous radio lab on Sunday on NPR where they were talking about the life of plants and how much plants react to stimulus. And I gotta say, I geeked out on it a little bit because, you know, if you put a plant in a certain place and the sun is coming from plant grows towards the sun, but they've discovered that, you know, plants do a lot of things. That they can hear water. I'm telling you, go watch Radiolab. It was pretty amazing. But there's an antecedent, there's the thing that happens before, and then there is a behavior, and then there is a consequence for it. For the plant, when it goes towards the sun, it gets more light. And so the consequence is it likes that and it moves more towards it. For our kiddos, all kiddos on the spectrum and not on the spectrum, if they learn, hey, when mom asks me to do something, if I throw a hissy fit, then I don't have to do it for at least 5 minutes, and she gives me a red popsicle. I'm gonna do that more, right? That's what we don't want. So we look at what the existing three-term contingency is, and we go, what can we change here? We always think as parents that we can change that behavior. That's what we want, is to change the behavior, right? But you have almost no control over the behavior. I know. Let's all have a moment to mourn that. But right, you have almost no control over the behavior. What are you going to do? Handcuff them? No. That is not the place where you have power. And we wouldn't want to handcuff our children anyway. Don't write in. I'm not advocating handcuffing. Do not handcuff children ever. But we have some control over the antecedents, right? Like we can make sure that our children get enough sleep, or when they don't have enough sleep, we can be mindful about how many demands we're putting on them, because that's what we would want, right? So we have some control over the antecedents, and we can, depending on the level of their receptive language, you know, we can talk to them about what's happening after they're going to pick up their toys, right? There's a lot we can do in the antecedent column. And there's a lot we can do in the consequence column. So a lot of times in ABA, the consequence is a non-reaction. We're going to talk more about that on Monday, about the non-reaction. But imagine if somebody asked you to pick up your toys and you threw a hissy fit and you still had to pick up the toys and you had to do it while you were doing the hissy fit and you didn't get a red popsicle for it. Eventually, throwing the hissy fit, you would realize it really didn't get me out of anything and it didn't do anything for me, so I might as well just pick up my toys. And here's the other thing. If we got to the point where we could converse enough with a child and say, hey, if you pick up your toys, and so if I ask you to pick up your toys and you do it without a hissy fit, that's when you get the red popsicle, and that's when you get praise, or that's when you get the book that you wanted, or that's when you get a sticker, and when you get 5 of the stickers, you get to go for ice cream, whatever's meaningful, right? When we teach them that contingency, then they go, hey, when she says this and I do this, all the good things I want in life happen. And that's when they get excited and want to learn more about society and what else, you know, do you want me to know how to do? Like if I say to you, thank you and please, and if I say I want more, I get it, right? That's the three-term contingency. And what ABA looks at is how do we manipulate the A and how do we manipulate the C so that we can get the behaviors we want. And the behaviors we want are learning and gaining skills, right? And being able to communicate our needs. Because our kids aren't able to do that when they start out, so they will kick or they will hit or whatever, because wouldn't you? If you didn't have a way of saying, I need this, I need a drink of water, I need a blanket, I need a break, right? If you didn't have a way to communicate that, eventually you start to break down. So I keep holding up this little piece of paper as if it's got the world on it. But you know what? The truth is, when you use these 3 columns and when you start to understand it, and then you help the person that you love in your life, no matter what age they are, to understand that this is how things work, it's talk about paradigm shift. You start to look at everything in a different way. Because so much of our time and our education is about this whole, well, the behavior. Even teachers, they go, oh, you know, Johnny came to school today and he was not polite. First thing we should ask is, what happened before? And what was the consequence for it, right? Because otherwise, what are you going to do? It's a behavior. A behavior is a communication. And when you know the antecedent and you know what happened, what consequence, then you begin to know what the behavior is. And those, my friends, are the keys to the kingdom. Okay, I belabored that enough. So moving on, we always have a question of the day. That we love it when you guys write in to answer the question of the day. You can write it on our Facebook, on YouTube, whichever. Our question of the day is, where do you go to escape negative feelings? And this can be a physical place, or this can be a state of mind, or this can be a behavior that you do. When you are feeling negative, what do you do? And boy, doesn't this tell us a whole lot about a person? I have a friend who said to me the other day, oh man, I had such a hard day at the work. I just really had to go to the gym and work it out. And I thought, oh man, like that wouldn't even occur to me, right? Right? And maybe that's part of what's wrong in my life, because what a positive way of working out negative feelings. But I will confess for myself, that is not my thing. Clearly, you know, food, hello, food, you know, food is my best friend. If I'm not feeling well, I'm like, what can we eat now? And that has gotten me where I am. But, you know, if we look at the three-term contingency and we say, okay, what happened before? If we're having some anxiety or some negative feelings, what do we want to do with those feelings? What behavior do we go to? And what immediate consequence is there? And a lot of times there's a long-term consequence. And the long-term consequences don't matter to us, right? Unless we make them matter. It's the same thing with our kids. But I think it's really important for us to understand, what do we do with negative feelings before we begin to look at how to help people on the spectrum to deal with their negative feelings. There are so many things that we can do, but some people just ignore and displace. And yeah, I think it's important that we identify, first of all, that just like everyone else, people on the autism spectrum are going to have anxiety, and sometimes more. Because if you can't get your needs met, it's very frustrating, and that can lead to more anxiety. And then if you have the world telling you that you are wrong, which unfortunately happens all too often with people who are on the autism spectrum, and we think that this is only the high functioning folks, but I would argue that that's not necessarily true. That we find that kids who are sometimes nonverbal and become verbal are able to say, I could tell by the way people were treating me that they felt that I was different and that they felt that I was less than. And what does that do to a person? And how much anxiety does that cause? I know when I go into a place and I don't know what the rules are, and there's a lot of restaurants now that it's like, you know, you're supposed to somehow suss it out. That's stressful for me because I feel like an idiot, you know. And imagine what it's like for a person on the autism spectrum who's constantly walking into a room and going, I sense that there are unspoken rules here, but I don't know what they are. That's stressful, right? So I think we need to acknowledge that and then help them to find productive ways, just like helping ourselves. I'm going to try this summer this idea of when I'm stressed out, that, you know, to introduce the idea that I could go work out. I know the minute the person said it, I was like, oh yeah, I bet that works. I think I know that that works. It just isn't what occurs to me. So we want to know from you, what do you do? I told on myself to telling yourself, you can write it in on our comments so that it's anonymous, but you know, or you can just say it out loud to yourself. So, but that's our question of the day. And we're going to end up here now with our topic this week. We started this out on Monday. By the way, I have a great show for you guys tomorrow. Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. But our topic this week is and has been functional communication. Because I think this is the line in the sand that everybody deserves functional communication. And it's a place we start for everyone, that people have to have a way of communicating their needs. And this does not mean necessarily vocal communication, but everybody has to have a way of communicating what their needs are. There's no judgment about that, right? If sign is what works for a person, there are so many ways that we communicate that are not vocal. It's just that vocal is one of the quickest. It can be one of the most efficient, depending on who's on the receiving end. But we see time and time again, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times kiddos will start out doing ABA therapy, and believe me, I understand as a parent, the first thing that I said when we started services was get him to talk. I came to CARD because I heard you guys can get them to talk, right? And we need to be realistic about this, that there are a growing percentage of people on the autism spectrum who, yes, can get to the point where they are talking and conversing. It's pretty much flipped from what it was 20 years ago, that 20 years ago, it was about 18% of people on the autism spectrum who would eventually be able to converse functionally with vocal communication, and it's pretty much the flip now, that there's still about 18% of our population that does not yet, with a lot of help and teaching and coaching and ABA and speech and all those other things, still is not able to access vocal, I want to be clear, vocal, not verbal, but vocal speech. So that's amazing. And that number keeps getting smaller, and we're going to keep working towards that. But part of the pathway to that, part of the reason why the number has changed so much is the focus on functional communication. Because before, parents were like, look, I want this child to be able to speak, so we're not giving them one of those old Dynavox things. Now they're super sleek and small like an iPad. But, parents were like, no, we're not going to do a PEC system where we're exchanging a card for something because we want to get to speech. The science is in that if we start with functional communication with somebody who's having difficulty getting speech, we will get to speech much faster. So please don't hold off on getting assistive technology or doing a PEC system. Pick whatever you think is going to be the most efficient for the child. Don't try to do PECs and sign language and iPad, a touching to talk, Proloquo. Don't try to do all of those, but with your team, make a thoughtful decision about what you think is best for this individual, but please get functional communication happening ASAP, because we know that that is the most successful step for that particular group of kiddos. Now, if a child is already vocal and speaking, we just want to grow it, then we focus on that, right? But if the child is struggling to get to that, it's really important, get the functional communication piece going. And the lion's share of the kids will get to that vocal speech. There are still that 18% that we're learning and growing and whittling that number down as much as we can to give that opportunity to everyone. But everyone can learn functional communication, and we have to advocate and make sure that we level the playing field and that the right resources are given to be able to teach those individuals. This is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, thinking about a person who isn't able to get functional communication because of funding or location or both. Or because someone is stuck in an idea of what they think is best for a child. That's the worst one, because as parents, we always want to do what's best for our child, but sometimes we don't have the right information. So if everybody within the sound of my voice spread the word, functional communication is the most effective step towards getting to all the things that you want. So, and it's a human right. It's a human right. We have to have functional communication. Okay, all right, we took a little bit longer with this today, but that's okay. We had things to talk about. I want to take a short break. We're going to come back, hit a couple of questions that have come in on the live feature as much as we can. And then we have two guests that are going to be joining us. Jordan Kamnitzer and his partner, Tony, is also going to be here. And we've had them on the show before, two amazing self-advocates with a short film that is out and keeps doing so well at festivals. I hear that they have an update for us about that. But it's always such a joy to have them with us. So they're going to be joining us in just a minute. So stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We wanted to take just a couple of seconds here to at least begin to address some viewer questions. So the first one, how can I get my son who is 10 years old held back in the 5th grade? What kind of an argument can I use that would make a case? They are saying that holding him back would not help him get up to the 5th grade level, but that doesn't mean my son can't go up a grade level even if it's from 2nd to 3rd. It would seem that the criteria they are using would exclude majority of special needs kids. Okay, so I'm guessing from this that you've already asked them if he could stay back. I will tell you that the majority of schools don't even entertain the idea because they think that parents will have a negative reaction. So I'm just checking here, but it sounds like you've already talked to them and that they have said that they don't want to do it and that their case is it's not going to help him. So if you really feel very strongly that he needs to be held back in 5th grade, then I would go back to his IEP and his goals. Here's where it gets dicey. And we will, we don't have Bonnie this week, but we will have her next week and we can ask her opinion about this. Bonnie Yates, who is our special education attorney that joins us on the show periodically. But, you know, you've got your IEP, right? And your IEP has goals in it. And the first thing that I would want to know is sometimes a school will put goals in because they know they can attain them, because it's a legal document and they're responsible for attaining the goals that are in there. So they kind of shortchange our kids and give an easy goal that they know that they can maybe already get to. So I would first take a look at the goals and say, were they realistic and were they goals that pushed for your child learning? Maybe you need to go back and say, no, I want to do 5th grade again and I want to make the goals a little bit harder. But it sounds like you and the school are on 2 different pages, and that's the page, this is a place where you got to come together. That I would be realistic with them about what your expectations are and why you want him held back in 5th grade. I mean, there are specific reasons to hold our kids back, but why schools don't jump to aside from the fact that it's a negative for the parents, it's also like it for some individuals, if you said, well, we're not going to let you leave second grade until you know everything that's in second grade. There are some individuals that would be in second grade for 4 years or 5 years, right? And that's not how a school works, because it's not, eventually you're going to be too big for the classroom. It's not going to work for you. And they're thinking of the dollar amount because eventually they want to move you off their roles, right? And eventually they will. By the time your 21st birthday, it's bye-bye, right? And they have a responsibility for showing progress. So they want to move them to the next grade up. I guess I would ask you, is it for social reasons? For the reasons that you want him held back in 5th grade, is that something that we could take this summer and just get him caught up and start 6th grade with a bang? And I'm only asking that because we don't ever want our kids to be bored. So you don't want him to go through the thing that he just went through unless we adjust the playing field, right? So I guess write back and tell me what it is you want him to accomplish in 5th grade that didn't happen. Because something in the equation has to change. Maybe a different teacher, maybe a different school, maybe different goals. But if you're going to have him do 5th grade again, if it didn't work the first time, we got to figure out what we have to do to make it work the second time, right? Or get him caught up over the summer so that he can start 6th grade. So write me back and tell me what the issues are. I would appreciate knowing. And then we had another question came in from our West Virginia mom. She says, hello, West Virginia mom here. My son is 5. I can't believe he's 5 already. High functioning with severe sensory processing issues. We've been having a very difficult time with fine motor skills, and his handwriting is like that of a 3-year-old. Palm grasp, switching hands, etc. He's having trouble sequencing his name in order, remembering letters, and how to form them. When I was giving him a bath, we were working on washing his body, and I noticed he uses his left hand to wash the left side of his body and his right hand to wash the right. Then it hit me, he can't cross midline. Does this affect his ability to write and read? How can we remedy this? His OT didn't catch it, and he's aged out of OT. Any tips would be greatly appreciated. Okay, first of all, you never age out of OT. It's OT because it's called occupational therapy. So I can't, like, we have senior citizens who do occupational therapy, and your school district should be paying for it. There is no aging out. So if they're telling you he aged out, I don't know who is saying that, but there's no possibility that that's true. Even if it's your private insurance, they can't do that. If they are giving OT to somebody for something else, and I'm sure that they are within their insurance policy, then the Federal Mental Health Parity Act requires them to do it with no age limit like they do for something else. So whoever's telling you that, I feel very strongly that that is a lie. So I would look back into that because OT will be very helpful. If you will email me and give me your address, I'm going to mail you something. That our good friend Joanne Lara, who is on the show on a regular basis, she does autism movement therapy, and she has a video that is a workout video for kids that's all about crossing the midline, and it shows you how to teach them how to do it, and you guys can all be doing it, and I want to send you a copy of that. But there are a whole bunch of activities that are all about crossing the midline. If you just go on Pinterest and say crossing the midline exercises, you will be down a rabbit hole for the foreseeable future, finding all different kinds of fun things that you can do. And just off the top of my head, there are certain sports that are across the midline because there's tennis and there's ping pong and things of that nature. But even doing, the crossing toe touches, those are crossing the midline. And it'll be wonky for him for a while. But even if you guys all got up in the morning and did 10 toe touches, what we see is that a child who isn't crossing the midline, once they cross the midline, you're going to see a jump in a whole bunch of cognitive skills, likely. And if that persists and he's still struggling, then it is time to probably look at seeing a neurologist, a pediatric neurologist. But I will say this about the handwriting it'll help him crossing the midline. And there's a great book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And I usually say to parents, it's a great book to do in the summer if you're looking for activities, because it helps you to cross the midline in terms of drawing, So, but there's a great thing that the therapists at CARD like to use. It's called Wiki Sticks. If you're familiar with benderoos, they're very similar to that. They look like pipe cleaners. It's a fiber and it's covered in wax. And what they do, it takes a minute, but it's kind of fun, is that they will shape the little wax sticks into the shape of letters. And then they stick them to the paper. And they're reusable, so you really don't have to do it a million times. But basically, so you're making an outline. It's like making a stencil, but you stick it to the paper and it has his name spelled out, and then he sticks his crayon or pencil or a fine tip marker. You don't want to do a pen because it has to be a right angle to be successful, and we don't want that. But a fine tip marker or Sharpie will work. He sticks it in the groove that is made by the Wiki Stick, and then he draws his name. And first, you set it on the paper in the order that it needs to be in, and then all he has to do is make the motion, and he will be successful. Because that's really what we want to do. Three-term contingency, right? The consequence of doing this is I was successful. Right? That's reinforcing in and of itself. And then he will be like, wow, there is my name. And muscle memory and visual memory, you just keep doing it, and then you peel them off and stick them the next place, and he does it again, and then eventually you have the letters there and you have him stick it to the page so that he's sequencing them right. Wiki Sticks, we often give them away when we have booths at things. We just did that this last April. They're not very expensive. You can get them from Amazon, and they're pretty fabulous. Benderoos work too, but the Wiki Sticks are a little stickier, and they're really meant for therapy. Super duper, everybody loved the Wiki Sticks. In my team was sitting and making shapes, because you can do anything with them, right? This is just one of the things that that you can do. But so send me your address so I can send you that video, and I'll send you the DVD. And then check out Pinterest though for other activities, and see about getting some Wiki Sticks. Like I said, they're not horribly expensive, and they're super usable. And then eventually have him shape the letters himself and then sequence them. You'll have a really good time. All right, we have questions that were on Facebook too. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can get them quickly. I know Traven's telling me our guests are here, and I very much want to get them in. I can't see where they are. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with our guests. And then if I have time at the end, I'm going to check in on Facebook to see what questions are on Facebook. Stick with us.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay. And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape. Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's a U.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet, but also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor, you still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes, but rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good. Good.
Neurodiversity in parents. One big happy family? We hope so. Anyway, what is neurodiversity? Everybody's talking a lot about it these days. Neurodiversity means that there's a view that people with autism just have a different way of being, and they should be honored for that. And then parents oftentimes look at autism as a disability or a disorder, and that can create some conflict. We sometimes throw up our hands, neurodiversity or neurodiversity. There can actually be some issues around this that we need to think about together. First of all, neurodiversity could be positive because it can create more of kind of a sense of acceptance in society. Yes, these people have autism, they're just different. It could possibly help create a sense of self-esteem that's improved in people with autism. They just realize, okay, I'm not damaged, I'm not bad, whatever, I'm just different. So that could be useful. On the downside, it could be an excuse to not give services to people with autism, to not have much empathy for their parents, and to not look at ways that they can be helped. And in many people that have autism, they do very well. Other people do not do well at all. They can't access services. They cannot enjoy their life. They're in pain. So it is important that we understand it's not just one issue. So how do we solve this when we look at neurodiversity? I think we have to look at it this way. It's kind of like when you have that big family dinner at Thanksgiving and everybody's around the table. You got your uncle, your aunt, your kids, your parents. Everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mesh. And I think the way that we need to think about this is we need to respect each other's opinion, because actually we need each other. We need to be allies on this. The outside world is a big place for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. We have to remember, we're one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and we need to behave that way. We should respect each other, listen to each other, and we will all have a great time when it comes time to get together and celebrate the lives of people with autism.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're very excited because once again on the show, we have joining us Jordan Kamnitzer and Tony Kent. And these are two amazing people who have been on the show before. I had identified you as self-advocates earlier, but let's be more specific. I'm going to let you guys introduce what words you use when you describe yourselves. So, Jordan, how do you identify yourself?
Well, Shannon, I do identify myself mostly, yes, as a self-advocate with Asperger's syndrome, and I'm very proud, and especially with the way things have been going on. And of course, I know there'll be a lot more discussion when it comes to the film Perfectly Normal and all that.
We'll talk about that.
Right.
And Tony, you wanted us to be clear about the fact that you are not on the spectrum, but there is another way that you identify. Do you want to tell us how you identify yourself?
Well, my name is Tony Kent, and I have a disability too, and I have Tourette's syndrome, but I take medication for it. And I feel very grateful in my life what I have, and incredibly grateful that I have Jordan in my life. And we've gone through some very hard times and sad times, but we're still together. And I mean, I sometimes don't stop and think how very lucky that I have it, especially to have Jordan. Even though I'm sorry, Jordan, that I'm a lousy girlfriend.
Well, I obviously you are not, because you clearly make Jordan happy. And this is evident in the film. Tell us how this whole film came about. It's a short film about the two of you.
Jordan?
Yes.
Are you sick of me?
No.
That's always the female question. Isn't that what we always all want to ask? Honey, if you're watching, to my husband, are you sick of me? And hopefully he'll say the same thing. No, not at all. That's what we always want to hear from our men, right?
Right.
But Jordan, tell us about the film and how it all came to be.
Well, the film, Perfectly Normal, had come through a friend of the owner of the company that I work for called Social Study School Services. And David Reiner and Marika Reiner knew a person from the Netherlands named Joris de Balci, and was interested in wanting to do a documentary about my lifestyle and my life with Asperger's syndrome. And though it took filming for a year and a half, we had it done at different places. And it was just a wonderful experience doing it, despite the patience of doing the thing over and over again.
Yeah.
That was very valuable.
And so it's about, what, 14, 15 minutes long? It's not very
12
long.
minutes.
12 minutes, okay. And I really encourage everyone to watch it because it's 12 minutes well spent to see. It's like getting to spend a day in your lives and going places with you guys, including going to a grocery store and seeing what it's like for you guys. And you guys are as cute as you can be. You're such a lovely couple. But your life is a little bit unique. You both work, but you work full time, correct, Jordan?
Right.
And you have a very important job
Yes.
that you've been doing for a long time. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm a file clerk for Social Study School Services, where supplemental materials grades K through 12 are supplied. I've worked there for 31 years. It's located in Culver City, California.
And I don't mean to be insensitive, but at a certain point, are you thinking of retiring?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Knowing about how the economy and things are itself,
Yeah. Well, I don't want to guess your age, and you don't have to say your age, but I know recently people have started looking at me and going, so do you have plans for retirement? And I'm like, retirement? What's that? I'm planning on working straight up through lunch on the day of my funeral. But other people plan to retire. So I'm glad to hear that it's not on your agenda either. You're
Even
planning on
at
working.
the age of 58, which is what I am, I'm not worried of that yet.
Okay, I'm
thought,
with you on
Jordan,
that.
you were 21.
She makes a joke about that.
Oh, look. That's nice.
Jordan's 21 and you're 20.
She makes
Oh,
a joke about that.
I would take that. Although I don't want the problems of 20 back again.
No,
I
I'm sorry
prefer
about
to
that.
be in my late 50s because 20 was intense, right?
Right.
But in any case, so this film chronicles a period of time with the two of you. And Tony, you work, but
I
are you
work
full-time?
Part-time.
Part-time.
And I'm very, very grateful for my job, you know. And I tell Jordan and everybody else that any person that has any type of job, they are very lucky they have it because it's very hard to find jobs nowadays.
Absolutely.
You know, so many places people have gotten laid off and they've lost their lease, you know, because they're not getting enough customers in and stuff like that, you know. So
and having a job is a beautiful thing to have. It's
not
a right.
only that, you know, I'm very grateful that I'm able to work because there are a lot of people with disabilities that are too sick to work and can't work, you
That's
know.
absolutely
So we got to
right.
count our blessings about that too, you know.
Absolutely. So if people wanted to watch the film, Jordan, where's the best place to send them right now to see it?
Go online to the New York Times Perfectly Normal link.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see it when you click on it. And I forwarded the note I got from Joris after it became available. And I always say to feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues.
And honestly, the New York Times picked it up and said, we think that this is an important film and made the link available so that people can watch it for free. And that really was an amazing thing for the New York Times to look at your documentary and go, we think this is important enough to put it on our website. That's pretty a big compliment, right? But you've had other compliments since, and the film has been able to do some pretty amazing things. You had a little bit of an update. What's happening with the film now?
Well, in the past years, I still spread the film around online or even on my Facebook page. Last couple of years ago, me and Tony went to San Francisco for the Self-Advocacy Conference, which went very, very well. It dealt with relationships, and we showed the film and answered questions about it.
And so if there's a group of people who are watching who say, gosh, you know, we think they watch the documentary and they think this is pretty amazing, because there is something, I mean, the word I want to use is intimate. It is so intimate that we get to spend some time with you guys. We get to see how you spend your couple time together. We get to watch you cooking a meal, going to the store, grocery store to get the ingredients for it. And we also get to see you playing the piano and singing. It's just delightful. It will put a smile on your face, right? But it will also, you know, our hearts bleed for you a little bit because it's not easy. At this point in your lives, some of the things, because money is not readily available. You guys are working hard like everybody else, and sometimes there isn't enough money for all the things that you would like to do. So there's that heartbreak to it too. It's just a real story about real people, and this idea of normal, right? Like, well, I don't know what normal is, but we get to see the normalcy of your life together, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So if people are watching that and they belong to a group and they go, hey, we got to have these folks come, you are willing to travel and to go to places and answer questions and speak and do all of that.
Oh yes, and well, one of the factors I'd like to say is that both me and Tony in August are looking forward to presenting the film to the Office of Clients' Rights Advocates in Sacramento. We're getting a stipend payment for that, and that's wonderful.
I'd like to see you get more of those. I think that would be a great thing to have, you know, if you've got a group and you can afford to have these lovely folks come and speak, I think it would be well worth your dollars. And that would be good for you guys. There'd be another income stream to help you guys with the things that you want to do. Because, you know, you guys have hopes and dreams like everybody else.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Of course. And we want to see you guys be successful in all those things. Now, at the time of the filming, you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys were living separately, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you still living separately, or do you live? Okay.
Yes.
But you come and spend weekends at his house? Okay. And well, I'm kind of glad when we asked you to come on, Jordan. I never want to assume that a couple is still together because you know you never know. But I was so excited when you said, "Hey, can Tony come too?" And I was like, "Yes, they're still together."
Sure.
I absolutely. That was like that put a smile on my face.
Sure.
Jordan still has to put up with me.
Yeah,
but
Jordan,
he's.
I'm sorry that I'm a terrible person.
You're not.
But so maybe let's take a minute and talk about what you love about each other. What are the things that keep you together?
Well, Jordan is very patient with me, and I know I do some things to drive him crazy. And my
that's
crazy,
called being a woman, Tony.
My crazy ideas, you know what I mean? But you know, I know sometimes, you know, Jordan and I do argue a lot, but every couples do, you know, every now and then. But we always work things out, you know. But I know sometimes I don't listen to Jordan, and sometimes I'm very hard-headed, and I know a lot of things Jordan is right, you know, and I don't admit that, you know, but, you know, that means that Jordan cares, you know, and I love Jordan very much. He's the best boyfriend in the whole wide world. I love you very much.
Thank you.
Jordan, what do you love about her?
She's been there for me at different times, both good times and bad times and crisis and all that,
So has he.
And you know, there are folks who say that it's hard to find a relationship in life in general, right? And then there are statistics about for folks that are on the autism spectrum that sometimes it's harder to have a successful relationship. What do you think the secret is to the success that you guys have found in having a long-term relationship? Because how long have you been together now?
26 plus years.
That's a long time. That's a long time. What's the secret to your success? We can all learn.
Cooperation, to say that. Understanding, and respect for each other's needs.
That's amazing. And what, is you say the same thing, Tony, or do you have a different idea?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. But you know, a lot of people, a lot of couples, you know, sometimes don't really do those things like cooperation and stuff. And you know, a lot of people sometimes they do break up, you know, or some, you know, are violent, or they do other things that isn't right, you know. But we don't ever do that at all, you know.
You respect for each other.
I think if, for an example, anybody is a violent person, for an example, they're a very sick person and they're not right in the head, you know. And I think they would need to get some serious psychiatric help, you know, because that's not normal and that's not right. But yet, you know, a lot of people in life are like that way. And Jordan and I stop and think all the time how very lucky that we have it, that we are not that way, and we work things out a lot more mature and a lot better than other people do. But other people need to learn, you know, but sometimes it takes longer for other people to learn, or quicker or shorter, but just it depends on the person. But, you know, I have seen and heard a lot of people like shootings and stuff, and I mean, and it's terrible. They're not right in the head, you know, they're very sick people, you know. Jordan and I do agree about that, you know, but we should stop and think how very lucky we are that we have good heads on our shoulders.
Absolutely, and solving issues and problems instead of saying I'm done,
or
right?
brushing it off,
brushing
it off, letting it go,
brushing it aside,
and that's some of what we see in the film, is that you guys will look at, if an issue comes up, you communicate well with each other, and you let each other know, hey, that doesn't work for me. So again,
but sometimes we don't agree the same, but that doesn't mean we're terrible people. Of course not.
You're never going to agree with somebody 100%.
Right.
Oh gosh, yes.
It also means a lot of sacrificial issues and lifestyles as well. I've still been involved with the Jazz Hands for Autism group, I know, for nearly 2 years now, and I really enjoy that. We recently had our annual concert there in the North Hollywood area.
Can I tell you who's on the show tomorrow? Is Ifunanya.
Yes.
Nowicki is on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, I know she'd been on some of them too.
Yes. So with Nancy for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, the CEO and founder of Jazz Hands is going to be with us tomorrow. So she's an amazing young woman, and I'm glad to hear that you're still doing stuff with them. That's really wonderful. Because you're a singer, play the piano.
Yes, I'm involved with classes and a lot of other activities. We've had a few performance gigs, some for stipends, some voluntarily without pay.
Wonderful. So we're out of time, but unfortunately, but I want to go back to, if people want to see the film, what's the name of the film again?
Perfectly Normal.
And you can, if you Google New York Times Perfectly Normal documentary, it should come up.
Yes.
And then 12 minutes, well spent, free for you to watch that and see the remarkable life and the rapport between you two amazing. My face always hurts after you're here because I smile so much. You're just so fun to be around, and it's, you know, when you see people that truly love and care about each other, it just makes you happy to be in their presence, and that's what you guys do for us here.
Of course,
so
very much.
We adore you, and I'm so glad that you could join us today.
Yes.
And is there also a website that we can send people to? Do you have a website, Jordan?
No, but they can go to my email itself.
Do you want to give your email?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Sure. jkamnitzer@gmail.com.
Okay.
Spelled J-K-A, M as in Mary, N as in Nellie, I, T as in Tom, Z as in Zebra, E, R as in Robert, @gmail.com.
Wonderful. You know, you also could have a career in voiceover, Jordan. You have a wonderful voice, you have a great speaking voice, and you speak very clearly and you articulate. So there's a whole other sideline for you if you ever need it.
Right, you know any agents for that?
I don't, but I don't even know if they do that anymore through agents. We'll talk after the show. In any case, we are totally out of time, but we want to thank the two of you for being here with us. We want to thank you for all of us for being with us. We started a little bit late, so we're ending a little bit late. But we will be back tomorrow. Great show. Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Two amazing guests that we have with us on the show. Anne-Laure Davin. I don't know if you guys know Anne-Laure.
Yes.
Oh, isn't she wonderful? She's on the show tomorrow, as well as Ifunanya Nowicki. I always stumble over her name.
Yes,
it's a
I know. We
beautiful
all do.
name, but it's Ifunanya Nowicki from Jazz Hands, along with Nancy Alspa.
Well, and you know that if Ananya, that she's tying the knot next year.
She told
Yeah.
me that she is engaged, but she also is one of the 40 under 40, which is a huge compliment to her. That's a huge award to get, 40 under 40 to keep your eye on. So we'll have both of those ladies on the show tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.